The NFL draft is tomorrow. There are two Badgers that the NFL is straight up disrespecting. They have them way too low on all the mock drafts. I'm going to tell you about those guys and more on today's Locked On Badgers.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, everybody? Locked On Badgers here. Thank you, everybody, again, for making Locked On Badgers your first listen every day. Free and available wherever you get podcasts, free and available on YouTube. We are your first source for all your Wisconsin Badgers, college football, college basketball news. You can find it here first every single day, and we are thrilled to be here and be building this community. Thank you guys again for making that happen, and also thank you to BetOnline. BetOnline is your home for all the latest props, news, and notes. BetOnline is where the game starts, and they help us bring the show to you every day, so check them out. All right, guys, we're going to jump into it. NFL Draft Week, it's happening soon. There are a couple prospects. We're going to get into the top-tier prospects first, and then we're going to feed into the other parts of this. I'm just going to start off with a couple of prospects that I think when I look at mock drafts, when I look at analysts, when I look at people talking about it, I think Jake Ferguson is a player and Leo Chenel is a player that people are straight up sleeping on outside of the Wisconsin circles. And it's relative, right? Like, I don't think Ferguson is a first-round pick or a second-round pick. But I am going to go through. Lance Zierlein is a draft guru on NFL.com, and a really sharp guy, by the way. I really like Lance's work. And I went through and looked at his basically his draft rankings, his guesses for where all these guys are going. And I'm just going to tell you right now if he's right or wrong, in my opinion. Again, this is only my opinion. I encourage everyone who listens, if you disagree, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Reach out, let me know. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm too much of a homer, or I'm not enough of a homer. Because on some of these guys, I think Lance is too high. So we're going to take Lance Zierlein's draft projection for all these dudes, and we're gonna hash it out. And are we higher on this guy or are we lower? So let's start with Leo Chenel. Right, Leo Chenel is obviously Wisconsin's best draft prospect. Lance Zierlein, again, NFL.com writer, an overall draft guru. He's been doing it for a while, and he's a sharp guy. He has Chenel as a third or fourth round pick. I'm telling you right now, that's too low. And not only is Chenel going to outplay that, he's not going to last till the fourth round. Zero chance. I don't think he's lasting until the third round. In fact, I think there's a better chance Chenel is a first round pick than he is a third round pick. But I think he's probably a second round guy. There's no way he's lasting until the third round. Listen, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll own it. I'm wrong all the time. Okay. There's just no chance. No chance. The guy is a physical freak show. He is athletic. He is big. He's fast. Statistically, he puts up numbers. He is a problem child. Listen, Pro Football Focus listed their top, and again, not everyone's a PFF guy, but it's a data point. Don't ignore data points, guys. In PFF, for those who don't know, they grade every player, every play. The top Wisconsin pass rushers, according to PFF, since 2016. And listen, there are a lot, we all know this, there are a lot of dudes to come from Wisconsin on the edges. The number one pass rusher per PFF is Leo Chenel. Number two is Nick Herbig, by the way. So, ding, 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 next year's draft, here we come. It goes Chenel, it goes Herbig, and then it goes some dude named TJ Watt. Yeah, we heard of him. The NFL's heard of him too. Listen, Chenel is just a monster. He's a problem. And if you read his scouting report, it's almost, by the time you get done reading his scouting report from these guys who have him as a third or fourth round pick, by the time you get done reading that, you're like, you can't have written this about him and still think he's a fourth round pick, right? His scouting report is blows up blockers, super physical, productive, impact plays, gets into the backfield. One of the quotes from Lance Zierlein is, he's recently engaged, but he's actually married to football. This guy is a throwback, hard-headed guy, but he fits in today's game because he can get to the pass rusher. And you guys remember, we had Corey Yates on earlier this year from Recruiting Analytics. This guy, athletically, his athletic metrics put him as inside linebacker one, number one in this class, ahead of every other inside linebacker. His athletic measurables, like the size he is and how quickly he moves, is an elite characteristic. And people get so hung up on what Leo can't do, right? We're not sure if he can cover. In fact, we don't really think he can be a great cover linebacker in the NFL. That's okay, because he's going to rush the passer, right? And that's the thing. If you can impact the passing game, and you can impact the passing game as a defensive player a couple ways, right? You can cover or you can hit the quarterback. Chenel can hit the quarterback. Those dudes with that type of production from big time conferences who can get the quarterback, they don't last until the fourth round, guys. I'm just telling you. So on this one, sorry, Lance Zierlein, you are wrong. Leo Chenel's going before the fourth. He's going before the third. I'm going to put my mark in this second round pick. All right, let's move on to the next guy, Logan Brus. And again, I'm kind of tackling what I would consider the premium Badger prospects first. There's a couple of them. Logan Brus, Lance Zierlein has as a fourth round pick. I think this is pretty accurate. I think it might be around early. And I don't say any of this to knock Logan. Obviously, I would love him to get drafted as high as possible. You know, multi-year starter, Wisconsin, big dude. I wonder if he's kind of a guy without a home in the NFL, right? He's not a big mauler. He's not going to survive on the inside really, really well and move piles. And I don't think he's quite athletic enough as a tackle. I think he's a guy who can be a swing tackle, play a couple different positions, be that sixth offensive lineman on a team, which is super valuable, right? Come in and play guard, play tackle. You know, every team has a guy or two like that because injuries just ravage teams during the season. Brus can be that dude, and that's a super valuable piece. And teams spend fourth, fifth round picks on that all the time. There's teams that value in the draft. You know, the Niners do, the Ravens do, who value versatile offensive linemen. So a fourth, I don't see if I had to guess fifth round, but again, when you start talking fourth round, fifth round, sixth round, it's kind of just teams, they have their own boards at that point. So, you know, if you went in the fourth, it certainly be shocking. I'm going to take a guess, fifth round pick. I think Lance is probably a little high on this one. Let's move on to Jake Ferguson. Now, I mentioned a couple Badgers that I thought NFL teams were just or mock drafts analysts are probably way too low on. Ferguson's this guy to me. And we all know who Ferguson is. You know, he's played here for 4 years, 4 productive years, incredibly consistent, 4.7 guy, not a Lance Kendricks and Travis Beckham athletically, but a really good pass catcher. He had a great Senior Bowl, showed excellent hands. And I think the underrated thing with Ferguson is he is more athletic than people give him credit for, especially in the open field. We saw him break tons of tackles this year. And I think if he was on a better offense with a better passing game, he would have been featured more. But because we didn't push the ball downfield, Ferguson could have made more explosive plays. Again, he's not a huge vertical threat. We know that. But he could have made more explosive plays in a better offense. I think the consistency, the dependability, durability. He's not a great blocker, but he's a guy who can block. And Zierlein has him as a 6th or 7th round pick on his projections. I think he's a 4th or 5th round guy. I think Lance is a couple rounds low on Jake. In fact, I'm going to be very surprised if he makes it out of the 5th because I think he's a number 2 tight end in the NFL. I don't think he's a star tight end, but I think he's a guy who you could plug into an NFL roster for like 7 years. Right. And he's going to catch 25 passes a year, 20 passes a year. It's a valuable thing. He's got great hands. He's tough. If you throw the ball in his vicinity, he's going to catch it. He's got enough athleticism to make people miss and fight for some extra yards. So to me, I think he's low. I think Zierlein is low in Ferguson. I think most people are low in Ferguson because they don't see the explosive plays. He averaged less than 10 yards a catch. I think that's more of a product of the offense we're in than the type of player he is, even though he's not an explosive dude. I think he's a little more athletic than he's shown at Wisconsin. So those are the 3 guys who, I really think have the best opportunity in this draft. It's Chenel, it's Brus, it's Ferguson. I think Zierlein's too low on Chenel and Ferguson, but we will see. Coming up, guys, next, we're going to talk about some of the fringy Badgers coming into the draft, potential people who maybe could be a late round steal, who I think in that group is best positioned to outplay their 6th, 7th undrafted free agent kind of projections right now. So we're going to get into that next. But first, today's show is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the best source for all your sports gambling wagering needs. It is an easy-to-use website. I use it all the time. I've got some money on the Phoenix Suns. I know you guys hear me talk about the Suns a lot. They're my basketball team. It is what it is. But I think that with Devin Booker going out, that line pushed out to plus 300 for them to win the title. Booker's coming back. This is a good opportunity if you're just looking to throw a few bucks down and you think that they might be a little undervalued because of the Booker injury. Not a bad chance to get it. I've talked about some of the NFL futures. You can get all these really cool features on BetOnline. If you think who's going to win the NFC Championship, the AFC Championship, if you have a good read on a young quarterback, right? Maybe you believe Burrow's going to repeat, right? They're not the favorite in the AFC. So this is a good opportunity if you think that they're the team to beat in the AFC to put some money on them, and just a few bucks makes it interesting, makes it fun. You don't have to put a ton of money on it to make it enjoyable and unique and an experience. And it's something BetOnline's cultivated. They built a community. It remains your best spot for all your sports developments, including podcasts and reviews. And again, it's not just sports. There's casino games, blackjack, roulette. Everything is there, guys. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device. Learn more about the trends in the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Guys, thank you again for making Locked On Badgers your first listen every day. Again, we talked about the draft. It starts tomorrow. There is not a better source of NFL draft coverage than Locked On. Live NFL 2022 draft coverage, 3 days of real-time analysis from our amazing lineup. Guys, Brian Peacock, Matt Williamson. These are legit industry insiders that can bring you up to speed on everything happening with front offices, the prospects. You're not going to find better coverage. So tune in to Locked On NFL Draft Live, which is on our YouTube page, starting April 28th, which is the first day of the draft, 7 p.m. Eastern. You're not going to regret it if you're an NFL guy, college guy. The best coverage is here on Locked On Draft. All right, guys, let's jump into the next segment. I want to kind of talk about some of the Badger players that are a little bit more on the periphery of this year's draft class, and a couple guys who I think have a real chance to outplay the projections. I'm going to start with Matt Henningsen. Matt Henningsen is a super interesting guy to me. He's a durable guy. He missed 1 year with an injury, but he's a durable guy. He's productive, very cerebral. Double major. There was a scouting report that talked about Matt Henningsen as the Goodwill Hunting of the NFL Combine. Basically, a genius on the field academically, and also being able to absorb playbooks and understand what's going on. Big physical dude, more athletic than he's not just a plugger. Right. He's not a demon off the edge or anything like that, but he's a guy who I think is stout enough to be a 3-4 end, hold up in the rod, hold up against the rush, and make a few plays in the backfield. He's going to be hurt a little bit by his lack of he's not a long guy. He doesn't have really long limbs like Isaiah Loudermilk from last year, and he's not really explosive. So if he gets drafted, it's going to be a 6th or 7th round pick. I think he's probably an undrafted free agent, but he's going to find a roster. And I think this is one of the guys I'm going to plant my flag in, and I think Henningsen sticks on a roster. Let's move on to Scott Nelson. So Nelson, obviously this is a guy who the size and kind of the athletic tools are what's going to get him a look, right? Scott Nelson, the free safety, started a couple years, 6'2", rangy. He's kind of, when you go to the computer, right, and you're building your free safety on, EA Sports, back when we could all play EA Sports. Please come back, EA Sports, college football. And this is a guy you kind of build your safety like this, 6'2", 6'3", long arms, can move around really well. He had great Wisconsin Pro Day numbers. He came out and he ran, 4.4-ish, really fast. The issue with Nelson is he's missed a couple years with injuries, right? And I don't think the athleticism always popped on film. Like you don't necessarily see that guy who's 6'2", rangy and really fast always on film. He missed some tackles. He's aggressive. He definitely doesn't mind sticking his nose in there. So I think at the NFL level, he's going to come up. He's going to support the run. The question is, why wasn't there a little more production? I think this is a guy, again, is not going to get drafted. But I think his size, his projection, like his athletic ability, and the fact that he's played under Jim Leonhard for a couple years is going to get him looks. And I think he's going to fight into a roster. I don't think he sticks. So unfortunately, and again, these are only my opinions, guys, and I am rooting for every single one of them to not only stick on a roster, but have great NFL careers. But if I'm making projections, I think Henningsen sticks. I don't think Nelson does. There's something about his film that doesn't quite line up with the athletic measurables. Let's jump into Colin Wilder, the great factory, right? We love the toughness, the leadership. This dude, some of his quotes and just some of his bravado and his charisma, it oozes off, the screen. It oozes off the interviews he does. This is a guy who helped keep the defense together. I don't think he's going to I just don't think he's athletic enough, unfortunately. I'm definitely rooting for him. Suffered a bad injury down the stretch. Had to miss the bowl game. He's an easy guy to root for. Came into the program as a transfer and really had a big, big impact on the defense. One of the leaders. I just don't think he's athletic enough. I don't think he's going to stick, unfortunately. He definitely has a bright future wherever he goes, whether it's in coaching, marketing. I mean, he is a charismatic, really, really fun dude to listen to. So I think he's going to have a really bright future. I just don't think, unfortunately, that future is going to be in the NFL. Let's move on to one of the tougher ones to talk about and project. Jack Sanborn, Leo Chenel's partner in crime. And this is a guy who's really helped form that interior wall, the death row, which is that great moniker that the Wisconsin linebacking unit has. By the way, great moniker, right? Death row. And Sanborn's been a big part of that. Very productive, had 77 tackles last year, 5 sacks. So I think people can see the productions there. He's tough. He's been dependable. He's been in a lot of games. He's, again, been able to play downhill and get into coverage a little bit. I just don't think he is athletic enough or big enough. So he has some of the same coverage questions that Leo Chenel has, right? We talked about Chenel, and the big question is, can he cover? But at least Chenel can fall back on just freakish Neanderthal type musculature, right? He's just a freak show, and Sanborn doesn't have that physicality to kind of offset his questionable coverage skills, because he's not a great athlete. So I think he's going to get exposed in space a little bit in the NFL. It's going to make it difficult for a team to invest a draft pick in him. But I do think this is another guy that's going to stick. I think, like Henningsen, Sanborn is a guy who will find his way onto an NFL roster, and he will be able to stick. Excuse me, just because I think the toughness, the ability to read plays, make tackles, he's going to check a lot of boxes. He wouldn't be the first or last later drafted or undrafted free agent Wisconsin linebacker that got to a roster, TJ Edwards, and really made a big impact and was able to carve out a role. And I think Sanborn could be that dude. I just don't think that there's a high ceiling there. So when I look at these guys, again, I think Henningsen's going to stick. I think Sanborn's going to stick on a roster. I think it's likely both are going to be undrafted free agents, but they're going to be prioritized. I don't think Nelson or Wilder are going to stick. And the other guy's Faion Hicks, right? I definitely don't want to leave out Faion Hicks. Faion Hicks has a chance, right? Faion Hicks has a real chance as a 5'11-ish feisty corner, gets in your face, not a great tackler, but he's tough. He sticks his nose in there. That's the other guy. Faion Hicks is going to stick because he's another guy that went to the pro day. The Wisconsin pro day ran like a 4.4. Real, and I think that film, by the way, I think that speed shows up on film for Faion Hicks. He can cover ground. So, there weren't a lot of big plays. I think he struggled at times making a play on the ball. I think he struggled with some better route runners, where he got turned around a little bit here and there. And I don't think he's a great tackler. So those are some of the knocks. But I think he's tough. He's feisty, and he's fast enough. He's got some good film on him. Yeah, I think Faion will stick as well. So, yeah, at the end of the day, three draft picks in Bruss, Ferguson, and Chenel, and I think a couple guys that are going to stick as undrafted free agents with Faion, Matt Henningsen, and Sanborn. And if you look at kind of what's coming down the pike next year, and I'm not going to get into too much because we don't have a ton of time on this show, but you could very easily see next year again, a first or second round linebacker with Nick Herbig, right? You could very easily see a couple of those offensive linemen, Tippmann potentially coming out. So there's a couple guys we're going to get into in a future show, but definitely a couple guys next year that I think we're going to continue this tradition of having a couple pretty highly thought of prospects. Coming up next, guys, I want to check in on the draft prospects from last year. How have they done from the 2021 NFL draft that were Badgers? We're going to check in on them and kind of get a follow-up on where their careers are at. But first, a quick sponsors of our show. All right, guys. Thank you again for making Locked On Badgers your first listen each and every day. We're going to jump into last year's draft picks and just get a bit of a feel where these guys are at. So the Badgers had 3 players drafted last year. Rashad Wildgoose was drafted in the 6th round by the Bills. Now, Wildgoose was cut by the Bills towards the end of camp. The Jets picked him up, played a few games at the end. He was active for 5 games, 3 tackles, no pass defenses. He's still on the Jets team. So, Wildgoose was a 6th round pick. And if you, as a 6th round pick, a year later are still in the league, that's a win. The Bills cut him, but the Jets obviously thought enough of him to sign him, play him a couple games down the season. So definitely someone to keep an eye on, but, pretty awesome that he's still on a roster and he's still fighting for that spot. He's still with the Jets. So definitely someone we'll keep track of that as this season goes on, as this upcoming NFL season goes on. Everybody kind of knows, or most people who listen to this show, if you're an NFL fan, you're probably a Packers fan. I am not personally. I am not a Packers fan. They're not my team. But most people on here probably know Cole Van Lanen was picked by the Packers. Didn't do a lot last year. He was active for a couple games. So, somebody that was able to at least, again, stay on the roster, get into a little bit of game action, and definitely someone as a Badger that we continue to root for, continue that offensive line pipeline. And then the most successful Badger draft last year was Isaiah Loudermilk, who went to Pittsburgh, played in 15 games, so played in just about every game. Finished with 23 tackles, a sack, 3 pass defenses. And again, if y'all remember Loudermilk in Wisconsin, like those long arms, that huge frame, those pass defenses, that was definitely something he brought to the Wisconsin defense. And he clearly, into the NFL level, that translates, right? That long frame, get the arms up, knock down those quick screens, those quick outs, slant patterns. So he had 3 pass defenses, and a guy. So overall, a good draft class for Wisconsin. Everyone's still on rosters. Everyone was at least able to get into a little bit of gamesmanship, a little bit of game action, I should say. And Loudermilk is a guy who really, played pretty well. Not a high pick. So, you get that out of, I think he's a 5th round pick. You get that out of that position where he plays 15 games and has a role in the defense. That's a win for Pittsburgh. And it looks good on Wisconsin, right? It's another guy that's been put into the league. Wisconsin has a pretty strong reputation as a college that really prepares players well for the NFL and for that next level. So, definitely something we're going to continue following these guys. We're going to have more coverage of the NFL draft coming up, after Thursday, Friday, after the 3 days of the draft, where everyone went, where all the Badgers went, where people in the Big Ten went. It's definitely something that's going to be interesting. And on a future show, we're also going to get a little deeper into, the players that from this year's Badgers team, next year's Badger team that we think are the future 1st round picks, 2nd round picks, 3rd round picks. It's a pretty loaded team with young talent right now. So guys, I really appreciate everyone listening, everyone tuning in. Really can't thank you guys enough. We're up to 44 subscribers on YouTube, which it may not seem like, honestly, it seems like a ton to me. And to have anybody take the time to subscribe, to listen, to like, to leave a review. We had a couple really nice reviews. It means a ton to me, guys. I can't thank you enough. It's an honor to be kind of part of building this community with Locked On and with Badger fans. And, we're going to continue coming down the pike, have a lot of great interviews, guys. A couple of coaches are coming up, a couple former players. Continue to have John Garcia, the Sports Illustrated recruiting director. So we're going to continue to bring you guys the best guests we can find, talk Badger sports. And thank you guys again for making Locked On Badgers your first listen every day. Don't forget to make Locked On NFL Draft, especially with the draft coming up tomorrow, your second listen. That's Eric Crocker and Ryan Tracy bring the NFL Draft to life every day with all the latest news and notes on NFL front offices and draft prospects. Again, that's coming up. The draft is starting tomorrow. You're going to want to hit them up as well. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk tomorrow.